just want to give an overview. What I want to do is just a little bit of administrative stuff. We do an email distribution once a month, so I want to just kind of get this around for everyone, anyone who isn't signed up for our listserv. It's something that you can get yourself on and off easily. Here's my disclaimer: we don't sell this list. It stays in our office. We won't call you by telephone. We don't raise money with knocking on doors and things like that. So feel free to sign up here. It is the way that we announce our skills training, as well as the different classes that we're doing, the special workshops that develop, as well as any kind of timely announcements on impending weather and that kind of thing. So I'll just go ahead and pass that around and we'll get that going. Well, nothing like a little earthquake and tsunami and nuclear reaction to kind of spur a little interest. Going around the room and what we're hearing, really, when people are saying, well, I don't really have any disaster experience, you know what, that's okay. There's nothing to feel bad about there. We all, though, have had unexpected things happen in our life, right? I mean, you would say that's fair game. And so where we put preparedness is really, it's all of the things that you kind of bring to the table from your life experience, the things that have worked for you. I mean, those are the things that's where it all starts. And then it's kind of that layering on of, okay, cool, now I've got this, and okay, I can kind of take this on a little bit. It's a process, or it's a spectrum. And so wherever you are with preparedness, we are like, yay, that's exactly what we want to instill. I think the awareness, what I've noticed is with this particular disaster, this one is hitting home in a different way than even the Chile, even the Haiti, even the tsunami from '04. This one actually has gotten people's attention. Now granted, the magnitude is greater than it ever has been in the past century, but this one, I think, has spurred people on in a different way. And so for all those reasons, when we're talking about preparedness, the work that we're continuing to do, no matter what you do now, then, last year, this year, it will all be to our benefit, our collective benefit at the end. So I don't want to, I'll do a couple different things. If you ever have a group of 20 or more folks like this, and you want to do a more in-depth program or class on what are some of those nuts and bolts of the personal, of where do I go when there is an earthquake, what do I do, what are some of the kind of must-have kind of things, give our office a call. We do a program all around town at the libraries, and so there's one coming up. The High Point Library is our next. This is our schedule of classes for all of this year. So the next one is the one closest to you guys is going to be in June, and these are all again online. So June 7th will be at the High Point Library, and then again in November we'll be at Southwest. So that's just a little bit there of what's going on there. I'm going to sound like a commercial here, but this spring we are starting our skills trainings, which when you mention wilderness first aid, of what happens, because most of the other first aid classes are you call 911 first and then you get going. We do a class, boy do I have a class for you.
Good,
we do a class, disaster first aid, which is what happens when there is no 911 and what do we do there. So these classes are starting, and so this is our schedule for this spring. These are all free. We do want you to pre-register though. So, and again, these are all online. But that's our whole schedule for spring. We will do a repeat of this series again in the fall. And because of the events of the past week, we're looking at adding a couple more classes to this spring series. So that's a little bit there. So these are focusing on the priority skills of wherever you are when something happens. First thing you want to think about is keeping yourself safe and taking a quake-safe action. We talk about earthquake a lot because we know it's going to be our big one. So keep yourself safe. Afterwards, shaking stops. Take a deep breath. You're full of adrenaline. Engage your brain and kind of now allow yourself to really kind of kick in on what are those things that are going to be most important to me, what's kind of up on my high list, my high priority list. So That's the kind of stuff we can spend a lot, more time doing and talking about. But your priority skills are, one, it's going to be to control fire and control utilities and prevent fire. And then it's going to be to search and rescue is your second priority. Looking for people, checking on people around you. Is everybody safe? Can you account for people? That kind of thing. That's number 2. And then number 3 is going to be how do we continue to care for people with our first aid skills. And collectively as a neighborhood, starting with family and then within the neighborhood, within your workplace, wherever you are when this unexpected event happens, how will you kind of mobilize and organize and things like that. It will happen spontaneously. We know disaster after disaster, that is when people meet each other. That's when they will, take action some way, some shape, somehow, and they will decide, what it is that they're going to do. The benefit of doing something ahead of time, which is what SNAP is, the Seattle Neighborhoods Actively Prepare, having kind of a neighborhood plan or a group plan with the people that are going to be, hello responder, hello neighbor responder, hello coworker responder. The benefit is you'll know that it's based on best practice, you'll know that it's based on something that has the safety backing behind it. And so when you're shooting from the hip and you're MacGyvering your way through, and you know that whatever you plan, not everything is going to go to plan, this way it gives you that guide to keep you kind of based on your priorities with that. Make sense? So that's where SNAP, that's the generic how to organize with other people, how to just kind of, that's our brand for preparedness. And that's what this little program is. So this I'll just kind of make available here, and if you flip it on the back side of it, this is where it all kind of ties in. I kind of did a graphic, well, not really, others in our office. It's not a single-handed effort by any means. It takes a lot of people, and it's been really fun, I have to say, out of our office, to see all of the momentum and the people coming to the table that will move mountains for you and things. And so Cindy is one of those key people. But when you take a look at this, the foundation of where we are with preparedness, it starts with you and your family. That's the bottom line, really, is things that you're doing for yourself as an individual and for your immediate family members around you. That's really by far our strongest base. And then moving up the line is how can you organize and talk with others around you. So in a nutshell, that's the basics of the SNAP program. As we kind of move up through our pyramid, that's when we come into the emergency communication hubs and the community level preparedness that Cindy's going to tell you about. So I'm going to kind of keep my stuff pretty short and maybe take some time to answer some questions that you might have while we're here. And I've got lots of resources, just kind of the basic resources to get you started. I don't want to overwhelm people, but I probably ultimately end up, giving you maybe more information than you might want to kind of take in at one time. But I will make it all available tonight. This is a little bit on putting together a kit. I call this the twofer brochure. So the red and white outside is your supplies kit. Tucked inside is your emergency family plan. So you've got kind of like two pieces right here. So that's a brochure that kind of gives you just a head start on what are those emergency supplies to have, how do I store them, blah, 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 like that. You don't want to forget about your pets, so we do a thing all about pet preparedness. And because they're part of your response plan too, and then more specifics on just earthquake. Have you guys seen some of these materials around? I know that we've got some folks that have been tuned in. Have you seen any of these materials?
I think I've seen a twofer.
Okay. The twofer? Okay.
Now, some of these things are on the
And
website.
all of these are on our website. They all are on our website. If you have a group that you want to get together, we are happy to provide these types of materials. We print by the thousands, so providing printed material is never a problem for us. So that's a little bit there. The out-of-area contact cards, it makes, I think, anymore kind of a good prop, because with out-of-area contact, it's really something more than anything, when it comes to emergency communication, what we've emphasizing is to have a talk with your family, with the immediate people around you, the people that care about you, that you care about dearly. And, what is your plan together when you're all in different places when something happens? How will you reconnect with your personal network? Okay, and because that really, when we talk about the psychology of disaster and what's going on to kind of ease people's mental anguish and things like that, having a connection with family, or at least knowing that you're going to have a way at some point to reconnect, that's going to be really important. And so that's a very personal piece. So establish who that person is, who is going to act as your personal relay. So that's a little bit here. And then just everyday kind of stuff is your emergency phone numbers. So this is just kind of your little cheat sheet that is really kind of like an everyday emergency thing. And so, and I'll ask some questions too, but the gimmies, there's more. Yeah, so because you're all here, I want you to walk away tonight better prepared than when you were when you came in the door. I have an emergency safety, it's a signal, safety signal. Here's your whistle, here's your keychain whistle, so that every day you can wear this, have this with you, and if you're in a parking lot, in a dark alley, on a street, at the mall, now you have a way to signal for emergency help wherever you go. And because we talk about having a safe light source and preventing fire, okay, you get the matching flashlight. Woo! And this comes with its own little flight attendant demo of how to work with it.
What is that?
So it comes, it's a flashlight. It's a flashlight.
I see.
To actually get it to work, and to actually get it to work, here's the flight attendant demo. Are you guys ready? Okay, there's a piece of tape around there. So simply remove the tape from around the top, unscrew the top. There's a little piece of plastic inside that is, it should come out.
Here.
Oh,
It's more secure than aspirin.
Let's see. Yeah, usually it just kind
Here,
of pops
don't
right
cut
out of it.
yourself.
Oh, well, okay. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. So that pops out of there, and now your contacts can connect in your battery. And so now you kind of put that back on. So now you have your own little safe light source. And again, it just kind of on and off like that, and it goes on your keychain. So Merry Christmas. There you go. So I'll give this all back to you if you want it. Sometimes people like to save the little piece and stuff. So, okay. So in a nutshell, that's kind of it. But I'm happy to just kind of field some questions.
I have a question in regards to this. So on the back it says that during disasters, long distance lines are more available than local lines. So if you're in a local area, you're more able to call out. Is that really?
Yeah.
I just would assume, especially with cell phones, that the cell phone towers would just get so bombarded that they couldn't reach out.
Yeah, it's true. Kind of the quick and dirty of it is, number one, we want people to stay actually off all phones, whether it's hardwire or your cell phone, after disaster. We want to keep those lines clear for 911 calls. That's what their primary use should be. Cell phones, what we know of, and now 40% of families are cell phone only. What we know of cell phones, sometimes they're up, great, sometimes they go down, they're down. In either case, typically what's going to happen is the system is going to get overloaded, not damaged per se. It just takes some time to recover. So while it's kind of overloaded, because literally everyone and their brother is calling up and, hey, what's going on? So that's why we say an out of the area contact, instead of trying to add to the congestion here in Seattle,
Right. Well,
send it out.
right. I
to
understand.
your-
I understand. when, assuming there is a disaster in this area, I know right now, with texting and all this internet stuff, is there do the phone companies have any way of limiting that? So people aren't streaming data from the same towers that are sending telephone calls?
Yeah.
Is there a
What's
plan in
happening
place for
with
that?
texting actually has really kind of come into its own.
Well, no, I'm not per se talking about, I'm more concerned about the internet stuff related to cell phone towers on the iPhones and stuff like that.
Okay,
Check the
yeah.
internet on them.
I think it's all fair game. I
Right.
think we are definitely in a Web 2.0
Right.
time. And so the texting, the tweeting, the Skyping,
Mhm.
all of the different services that you use on a daily basis to stay in touch with people, I think people will want to be accessing them. And then certainly the blogging, the Facebooking, all of those postings and tweetings and things that people are doing
Right.
from their smartphones. Yeah, I have no doubt people are going to keep
Oh.
But
doing
is that gonna impact the 911?
Is
Right,
that
right,
gonna
that-
impact
that's,
911? Is that the
that's,
question?
I think
my,
so.
my question is about the impact on basically the 911 calls, because a lot of them do the source is cell phones, and also just contacting people outside the area. I mean, is there a priority given to reaching outside of the general area versus, tweeting?
You're asking if the telephone companies can.
Well,
Yeah,
phone
yeah, I
establish
mean,
a restriction
is there any cooperation
First
between
one
the
to,
city?
first one to dial gets through.
Right.
Yeah,
how it
and,
is.
yeah, and what the phone companies have done is, and I'll have to double check if it's still going for hardline, they do kind of siphon over a certain bank of phone lines for emergency response to
Okay.
keep more hardline phone. I know that was it with hardlines.
Right.
I'll have to double check for
Okay.
the South.
No, thank you. I'm just wondering, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
they do kind of prioritize for emergency service kind of stuff. Do you know, Matt?
Yeah, there's three things that are happening.
Mhm.
One is local call, 911, local and long distance are on different switchboards.
Okay.
911 is reserved, local is going to be overwhelmed, and it'll be consumed mostly by the government. It's built to handle about 5% capacity, 5% of the local population at any given time. So if you try to make a phone call during a disaster when everyone's trying to use the system at the same time, your odds
Right.
are about approximate to winning the lottery.
Right.
And on top of that, the government is going to eat about 80% of that. They're going to secure it for themselves.
Got it.
Only people with what's called a GETS or WPS,
Mhm.
Guaranteed Emergency
The priority
Telecommunications Number,
system, yeah.
are going to be able to call on that line.
Okay.
Now, the reason they say have the long distance line is because long distance is unfettered. It's
Okay.
unmonitored. So your chances of actually connecting on the phone to someone outside of this area dramatically higher.
Okay, great, thank you.
But I would say still even a long distance immediately after, like in the first couple hours, is still gonna be kind of, so you just kind of
Alright,
have to, yeah.
Great, thank you
So,
for
yeah,
clarifying.
okay.
Debbie, would you be willing to talk about the SNAP program a little more, because my neighborhood actually did it, my little micro neighborhood did it, I don't know, 2 years ago, and I was so impressed by what the city had available. And it was absolutely news to me that when there's a major disaster, the city isn't coming for you. And I thought, that this was the city's I was so impressed by all the materials that the city had available, and our neighborhood for the first time learned, okay, there's an older woman on our street who's alone, and it made us get together, and I think that other neighborhoods would really benefit from it.
Okay, yeah, and thank you, that's when we're talking about, getting together with your neighbors, then that's exactly what it is just kind of start with a conversation with your neighbors. What we're asking people within their neighborhoods is the reality of our situation is going to be, we won't be able to be there for people, as many as need it. And so the more of us who can and have some ability to do the planning ahead with their own neighbors, then that's going to be much more reassuring for your own situation. And so starting a conversation with people, we've got a few little hints here of, do you do the little Ziploc bag walking around the neighborhood, or do you tie it in with National Night Out, which is the crime prevention second Tuesday of every August. Is there a time when you can really kind of get to know who is in your neighborhood? So we're trying to provide different opportunities to be able to do that, and that's a great opportunity to be able to just really find out. Decide for yourself as neighbors, where would we meet? Where's that natural gathering place along our block, in our condo complex, for our apartment building, that kind of stuff. Who would we contact in an emergency? So the way SNAP is designed now is anyone who kind of takes an interest in this kind of stuff, you know, kind of get a little bit of momentum going, use us as your resource. You know, we'll come out and teach, we get a bunch of folks together, that kind of stuff. And then, you know, where you take it from there, custom design it around your own neighborhood, because you know your neighborhood needs the best. If you know that you're a neighborhood of lots of parents that are working during the day and kids at school during the day, or if you know that you're a neighborhood of people living alone and some are older and by themselves, some with medical, you know, you will know what all of those characteristics are, and that way you can take those things into account ahead of time, and it makes us all, you know, stronger in the end. So specifically, it's gonna kind of center around personal, of what you're doing for your own family, and then it's deciding together, well, I've got some first aid experience, well, I know a little bit about how these utilities might work, and then kind of designating, you know, among and through each other, okay, cool, you know, I'd be willing to kind of be here as the person who can take in extra pets or something like that. And so start kind of in a simple place, and just take on the ones that kind of make the most sense for you at the time, and just kind of use it as a continuing guide as you go along. Make sense that way? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot for being here.
Yeah.
This
Thank
is
you.
great. I don't
Yeah.
think, maybe people might not have known how in depth we're gonna get today, but it does
Okay.
sound like there's a lot more depth here to do the actual SNAP program, so I know there's a lot of people from my block in the room, and maybe we can organize one of these. So I'm excited about it, so
Good,
thanks
good.
a lot, and I hope you'll stay, because I
I will.
know there's more conversation you can contribute to.
Yeah.
So Cindy.
Yeah, and it's a perfectly natural kind of segue. And I'm going to pass around the maps so that you can sort of see the visual of where we're at. So the two district councils after the Nisqually earthquake, Southwest District Council and Delridge Neighborhoods District Council, both said emergency preparedness better be a priority for us after that. Mostly because the recognition we could be sort of an island. I mean, you can go south down to Burien, but you know, all those hospitals just like over there aren't going to be as accessible. So it took several years, and I was on the Southwest Precinct Advisory Committee, so you had kind of three populations of group representatives trying to figure out what to do. And it just was not happening, because community groups are often already overloaded. I'm like with the Morgan Community Association. You know, you're just overloaded with crisis du jour. You know, the city's doing something, the neighborhood's doing something. And so sitting down and figuring out an emergency preparedness plan was not in the cards. And we had we were trying to foster some of the SNAP. SNAP was just coming up around 2006, 2007. We were trying to foster some interest in that, and we had two fantastic speakers at an awareness fair we had from the fire department, from the police department, that really shook everybody up by saying, you know, you're on your own. At any given time in the city of Seattle, there are only 204 firefighters on duty. So when the disaster comes, there are 204 firefighters for the entire city.
600,000.
You know, so the message was really driven home about we really need to get this together. And so when Deb talks about you and your family and your immediate neighborhood, the city was saying, and we're not going to be there for a while. They were really trying to help us encourage to organize at a more community level. The community groups, some were ready to step up, and that's how you got this distribution. The other representative on the Southwest District Council and I went to all the neighborhoods and said, who wants to have a hub? Who wants to have a hub? Because the windstorm really crystallized for us. In the windstorm, you had people on one side of the street who had nothing for 7 days, and you had other people on the other side of the street who had a 3-hour outage. And you could find, after a day or two, people starting to meet on the street, even though they were in a formally SNAP organized neighborhood, going, hey, do you need a place to take a shower? Do you want to come over and get warm? And it was really that realization that neighbors are going to want to help neighbors, whether you do it ahead of time or you provide something in the case of the emergency so that people can come get information. That is what people are starving for. And if you have information about when are resources coming, what's happening, you can deal better with the long-term implications. So these 9 are the result of going out and just saying, who wants to play? And so we said, great, we'll start. We actually started with 8 and a 9th one was added. And the concept is really super simple. We are the ultimate crisis result. If the power's out, if there's no communication with the city, if we know that there's damage beyond their ability to get to us within a day or two, collect at this hub and figure out what we're going to do as a community. And when we started doing outreach, it scared us because we went, oh, if people aren't ready, if they're not secure in their own ability to provide for their family, people will be overrun at the hubs with people going, need. And what we want is kind of a balance of people who can show up and say, I'm safe, I've got enough to keep me going, I've accounted for everybody, but can I help dig people out? Or I've got a slug of rope, and if we need to bring the rope here so that we can go do some kind of a tie down to prevent further damage, let's do it. Who's got a generator that we can store some people's insulin in? It's really that. It really started as an initial, how can you help yourselves on something slightly larger than the SNAP? And what we really want is for, if there's SNAP groups, they assess their neighborhood, and they come back and they go, we have no injuries, we have, and we have large maps, and we can go, that's a good neighborhood. And then if we have people who say, I'm ready to do some disaster first aid or urban search and rescue, we'll go, we have not heard from this area at all. Please go see if we haven't heard from them because it's bad or it's good. And then our part of the deal with the city on doing this was we had for a long time a real hard time getting specific information about West Seattle. In the snowstorms, what you would get was, the best you could get kind of was like, they're going to do the Alaska Viaduct or Spokane Street's getting graded. And I counted it, it was like 17 public releases on the Spokane Street, but I wanted to know about Fauntleroy, or could I get down Morgan, or, there was nothing. So one of the things that we will help do is provide information into the city, and the city can have a more specific location to get information back to us quickly. Like if a water bladder is going to be delivered, where is it going to go? Or when the Red Cross shelters start opening up, we can help get that word out, because if the power's really out, we know a lot of people don't have those crank radios, so how do you provide a central place that information can come to somewhat consistently? Everything beyond that is MacGyver. It is. I mean, we've got forms to record stuff on, and we've got rules, so if people show up and want to be a volunteer, we can plug them in. But I never watch CNN hardly. I'm always watching the local news, and we were sitting there and we went, oh, the headline is the dog getting CPR, let's go to CNN. And it was the earthquake. It had just happened. So we watched the whole thing unfold, and we just went, would we be ready for all that? But you don't know, and you won't know until you try, and it's a shame if you don't try. If you have a skill, if you have a pair of working feet where you can walk around your neighborhood and just help with understanding what the situation in your neighborhood is, that's what we want people to come do. Yeah.
So, I have several questions about the hub. One is, how was the location decided? Does that just happen to be the volunteer who said, I live here and I'll do it?
That was exactly it.
That's
Seriously.
what I figured. Okay,
Yeah.
so.
And it was a little bit around big field, not inside a building, but maybe near something that has a generator. Like I'm really lazy. We picked this Thriftway because I discovered they had a backup generator. Oh, I could set up on their little plaza, and it's sort of out of the wind. It's not quite under something, but maybe they'd let me come and get warm.
It'd be very popular with everybody coming to.
Well, it's our natural gathering place. Now, if their building is destroyed, I've got a little park now across the street we can move to.
Right.
But everybody's sort of going to have to assess. Yeah.
So with the Delridge hub, is anyone here located close to that hub who can describe what because it seems like it's really not near anything?
The Pigeon Point.
The Pigeon Point one?
Yeah, that's not really a Delridge hub.
Right.
I mean,
That's the
right,
Pigeon Point hub.
Benjamin actually is
But we're like missing.
wanting to help create a Delridge hub.
But that's exactly right. So, that's what we want to do with you guys. Because that Pigeon Point one, we clearly knew it was serving a high ground, right?
Right.
This valley here has been completely bereft of having a hub, and so, you know, we just kept asking, and finally someone bit.
A question too, speaking of communications. I don't know the name of the person at the ham radio tower, but what's going on in the world of ham radio? And maybe we should actually try to communicate with this person, get in contact with him somehow or her who owns the ham tower, because I'm sure they've got a backup generator. And what else is going on in the world of ham communications?
Is it a big
Tower, you can actually see it.
It's on there, it's on the house, okay.
Right back over
Okay,
here.
no, that's perfect. So there's a, at the same time, there's kind of a resurgence of the West Seattle Amateur Radio Club. And most of those people belong to the Auxiliary Communication Service. So the way we communicate is every one of our hubs has a local, it's not quite as low power as family service radios. It's the next one up where you have to get an FCC license, but at least you don't have to test. We wanted to make it so that anybody could really handle these radios. They're still push to talk. We communicate to a net control who is co-located with the hams. And the hams are really the legal ones to transmit it into the EOC. So we actually have a direct line in.
And do these centers know who those people are?
Mhm.
So,
We drill with them.
oh, okay, so I'm curious to know who, I can find out who the person is by walking up to the house, but does anybody know who the ham operator is? You've met him, Mike?
They came to
I've met him, yeah, he used to, I can't remember his name.
Okay, that's
But yeah,
cool.
he's
He's
just
around.
attended meetings before.
So he's on the mailing list, so if you post on the discussion group, wouldn't he write
Do you
back?
think I've met him?
Well,
Betty?
Probably.
He's been here a long time.
there's a ham website where if you have his address, I can go enter it, get his call number, find out who he is, so we can connect with him.
Because that might be thank you for volunteering, but you're close in proximity, we might bounce between both places if that person's willing.
Yep. And there are people who join that auxiliary communication service and they get formal training and they're vetted by the city and are kind of city volunteer workers. And then there's guys who don't want to do that, and if your guys is one of those, we're gonna say, show up at the hub then.
Yeah.
You know, just be an ad hoc person helping us. Yeah.
Cool.
How hard is it to become one of those people who has not the ham radio, but the one you're talking about?
It's called GRMS.
GRMS.
Wait,
Is that something?
GMRS.
If somebody was in GMRS,
Yeah,
if someone was
Grand
interested in that, could they purchase one and get certified? What would they be looking at as far as cost and time?
It's $65 and typing it on the website. That's why it's not a test. Yeah. The only thing is because it's so powerful it can interfere, and we know ships use it, and so you know we listen to the ships all the time, and so it's just so that you recognize the controls. And there's certain protocols, like we're so close to Canada, we can't use certain stations, and we give you that kind of information.
It's called
Ground Mobile Radio Service.
Okay.
So the ham thing requires this tower, correct?
The ham is actually much more sophisticated and requires training. You actually have to take a test.
But it does also require a tower. Yes.
No, yeah.
Because I'm just thinking,
Even in
these towers
towers.
collapse.
No, I mean, you don't
In
have
an
to.
earthquake type thing, you know, it's like.
Boy,
is
he's
that-
better not, that's all I can say.
I was just kind of wondering, it's like, you know, is that something?
Yeah, most ham guys are such junkies, they have mobiles mounted in their cars, you know.
Wow.
A simple antenna will get you a long distance. There are guys who do contests to see if they can raise Korea. I mean, that's probably one of those guys. Seriously, I'm not kidding. It's an amazing hobby, and they are
Poor Kim Jong-il.
such technicians. Yeah. There was another question.
Yeah, so with the hub, the idea of the hub is that you actually physically walk to the hub and you check in physically there at that spot. You're not calling or texting, because you can't. So
Yeah,
you're going to that spot.
the assumption is these are the first 1, 2, 3 days while the infrastructure is trying to recover.
So you've checked with your immediate neighborhood, and then you trek over to the hub, assuming the hub person is there, and we all coordinate around the hub. So I missed the name of this gentleman.
Yeah.
Ben.
Ben, hi Ben. And where are you located?
I'm just down Delridge.
But we have not located your hub yet.
Okay, I was just thinking that the pho restaurant would be a nice place to because they live upstairs, and because they've turned into a community gathering spot. People are having their meetings there.
And the field is right there.
And the field is right there, and
The
they're
park, you
really,
mean?
And our power hardly ever goes out.
their park power doesn't go out, and they're right on the bus line, they're right on Delridge. So it might be interesting to network with them
And it's a newer building, so it'd be more
Hopefully
seismic.
seismic, and he's a contractor and a builder,
Yeah.
so
We-
maybe we should,
For-
No good deed goes
I
unpunished.
would just make sure that you have room to, if the house, or if the building is somehow damaged, that you can operate outside, which is, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I don't wanna in any way suggest that you should not take this on.
She just has her favorite coffee house
That
already.
you know.
Yeah.
But thinking that they are a really centrally located.
Yeah.
Do you have a list of, like, I'm the Dawson Street Block Watch Captain, and I would love to take some, like, search and rescue. Is there a list of certain captains and who have certain skills? Like, do you have any kind of resource like that? So
Oh.
if the hub started, then I could check in and, you know, point persons for each specific micro parts of these neighborhoods.
Say it again.
Well, I just a more specific list to start to drill down more specifically at people in the neighborhood. So you have your hub person, and that's one person of a pretty
Oh,
large area.
No, actually, we figure it's gonna take 6 to 7 people at a hub to deal with more than 50 people, which you could have.
Right.
That, you know, and I don't wanna go into tons of details, but you got someone who's gotta greet the people, you have psychology you've gotta deal with, you're gonna have stressed and freaked out people. And you have to try and figure out if they are just looking for rope, or are they trying to tell you that the senior center's on fire?
Yeah.
Now, if it's rope, you know, head this way, and that kind of crowd helps manage itself. If it's, we're trying to get information to the city so they can start preparing their disaster response, and the senior center with its oxygen tanks is about to explode, you know, we want to put them in the line to get to the ACS messages and the ham radio transmission. So you have a greeters, you have message intakers who are trying to help get the specifics that the city has to know because they don't want to send a response unit to the wrong place, right? Then you have a kind of manager who's helping prioritize what really goes because it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, and a radio operator. And then over that, you've kind of got a hub manager just trying to run crowd control and assimilate new volunteers. So those are the roles we have.
Are those filled at each hub?
Oh, well, you got a brand new thing.
Right. So I'm saying if I go back to if I have a community meeting with my watch now, and I can say who has what skills, and then
Yes.
if I can get that information back to someone,
Yep.
who would I?
Get it back to me, and Ben and I will work, because what we've done is, as each hub, you know, they started with one brave soul who said, sure, I could do that. You know? And then when we discovered really it was not just 1 or 2 or 3 of you, it was like this, we've been drilling, and we enlist citizen actors too, because we need people who show up at these drills going, wow, you know,
great.
to practice.
Yeah.
And so we've got another one coming up in May, and that's one where we'll do a conjoined drill with the ACS team. They usually run that because they're trying to practice their ability to manage message flow.
ACS.
Auxiliary Communication Service, ham guys.
Oh, that's.
And so, yes, as Ben and I figure out how to bring you guys up, we'll do training, we'll do small mini drills for you, we'll do whatever makes sense for your neighborhood. That would be great.
And you're listed on the website for this?
I don't know if I'm on the website, but if you send it to them, it comes to me.
email me.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but it's just, it just is like contact us and it doesn't have my name. But it's cbarker@west.net is the
And
direct.
Cindy, you've just done this as a volunteer and as a neighbor, right? This
Yeah.
is not your official role.
No, and I didn't tell the story of, you know, like, my boyfriend was in search and rescue, and he volunteered for the King County Emergency Operations Center. And so he thought his idea of a hot date was if I would do search and rescue with him. So, you know, vans, you know, and so that was how it started, and we were both volunteers at Nisqually. We both spent 2 days at the King County Response Center, taking phone calls and being responders. And so I know here in West Seattle, it's so scary to not know how we're gonna do, because I'm so worried about all these people not doing this. Now, one other thing about the block watch, somebody mentioned that they were part of block watch. Some block watches are actually still having to deal with the crime in their neighborhoods. There's other areas where they've gotten that under control, or they're lucky. And so there's this natural affinity of if you're bored and your block watch is, you know, looking for something to do, you could start expanding and taking on some of this as well.
Really great, thanks so much.
So I'll overdose him.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it seems like we do have a lot of people in this neighborhood who are interested in this topic, and I think we're gonna be in more communication with both of them.
Yeah, that would be great.
Just out of curiosity, do other neighborhoods in Seattle outside West Seattle have hubs
Yes.
as well?
Actually, really good point. So I'm over here doing communication, that was my thinking, communication hub. Queen Anne Magnolia, almost at the same time, was not doing hubs, but they were trying to figure out how to have disaster response plans. And so they were going to supermarkets and saying, can we have a memo of agreement? So if there's a disaster, you would come help us. And so they were signing up with churches to know what buildings they could use. And so this EOC hooked us together, and Wallingford was just starting, and I'm looking at them going, it's so cool, so that's really what we're working on in 2011. And they're going, communication hub, we never thought of that. So we meet as a steering group for the whole city now, and it's still, they facilitate us, which is, I'm sorry to have to say it on camera, but we don't want to be a part of the city. We want to be able to be freelance and do what we need to do and not be burdened by bureaucracy. We'll take their money anytime, but of course, but it's worked really well with them and their practical knowledge and their guidance, but they kind of back up and they say, this needs to be grassroots or it will die under the bureaucracy.
And that's exactly where we're framing this, this is your neighborhood plan, this is your response. And so we are just really supporting all of the work that you are doing so that we can be, as responsible.
We don't want to be rogue, but we...
it's like, it works, it's working.
I went through the SNAP training several years back, and it was fascinating. And if none of you have done the SNAP training, you all really must all go. It's super fun and terrifying and really useful. There was mention at that point that there was some small city funding that if a community wanted to get together and say buy a specific equipment for disaster responses, there was small money for that kind of thing. Is that money still available?
Actually, there is. It's through my Department of Neighborhoods, and it's called Small Sparks. And at that time, the limit was $250. Well, we raised it up to $1,000.
Wow.
So it's first come, first served. It's early in the year, so if anyone's interested in learning more about Small Sparks, you guys can always go on our website, or you guys can give me a call, and I can have a one-on-one.
We did
And the Small Sparks grant is the easiest grant you will ever
That's
write.
what I
If
tell
you write it,
people.
you will get it. So
But we do ask 6 weeks to process the application. That's the only
The
thing.
other thing about just equipmentizing and stuff, the West Seattle Garage Sale Day is coming up. I mean, you cannot find a better place to get flashlights, clipboards, all, put that in your mind and go look for that. And if you spend $10 a year in money, you have half a bag built,
Are there other resources, good places you recommend to buy kits? I know you guys said you just bought emergency kits. I've been looking for them, the Home Depot ones, they're terrible.
Yeah, the Red Cross has got on their website, and because we want to get people engaged around this, the hubs are sponsoring a information and lecture series. They didn't use the word lecture, but it's something else. And so we hope to have some vendors that can come to those as well. But they're to help do training for architects, so architects can help identify what buildings should not be entered. People can come learn about specifically pet preparedness, so that's about to get announced in the next day or two.
Can I make a suggestion for you? Because I had the same question a number of years ago. What I did was I went to Value Village and bought a real cheap bag, and I sewed a red cross on it. And then over the years I've been filling it up with things, and it's in my bathroom on a hook with a big red cross on it. And that way I know what's in it. Otherwise, you buy something from Red Cross, you know what the first thing is you're going to do with it? You're going to open it up and see what's inside. So you might as well do
Never
the
fit back in.
So yeah, and you're going to have to put it back in. So I thought, you know what? And that's why I'm going to take this first aid course, and then I'm going to take the bag with me and lay it all out, and the guys and gals are going to look at it and say, this is good, this is not good.
Yeah.
Make one yourself.
Yeah, and her list will get you 99% of the way there.
And a lot of this stuff you have already in your household.
Yeah.
It's it's just a matter of gathering.
I just don't wanna put it in the first aid kit and then steal it for
Right.
some
Well,
other
Yeah,
class.
The best thing about emergency preparedness is like there are such cool toys out there. I mean, like we bought crank radio, flashlights, cell phone chargers. You know, yeah.
You know, a friend of mine in Magnolia, the Ace Hardware there, after some last disaster, took a trash can and went through your list and put everything from their store in the trash can, and they sold them for $85, and it was like $125 back. So I called True Value, and they said they didn't have anything like that, but it would be a good kind of tie-in with you if you said you could buy them there, and then they'd make money and their discounts.
Yeah. Or
Because
even
it
just
is kind of takes a while to go through these
It
lists.
does,
and pull
yes.
everything.
And there's a few different local vendors around.
The place in South Park, or Georgetown
There's
still
one
there?
in
South Park.
South
South Park,
Park,
yep.
and that's the Emergency Preparedness Services. It's EPS dash, Google them,
Yeah.
but it's emergencypreparednessservices.com, I think.
they're the ones who come to some
To
of our
some of
things.
our programs, yeah. PrepareSmart.com is another good local one. They do a lot with nonprofits and some group, kind of group stuff, so they're a good one. And then AmericanPreparedness.com is down in Tupelo, Des Moines area. So those are three local places that are doing it. And whatever kind of kit you get, if you get a pre-bought one, take a look at it and then customize it. Because it'll have just the bare bones, and you really want to be able to customize it with the stuff that's going to make sense for you. So